Well, hey everybody. We are going to talk about long range shooting, specifically in hunting situations. Let me get buckled in here. There, there's been a huge trend over the last 20 years with long range shooting, and there's a reason for it. We're going to go into that. But there's a difference between long range shooting and taking a big game animal at long range. And I think sometimes the lines get blurred. I think people think they're capable of something they're not. And we're going to discuss it. Let me get on the road here. If you hear a little bit of fan whirring or whatever, it's warm here today, and I've got the air conditioner on in the truck. When it cools off a little bit, I'll turn the fan down some. But it says it's 115 in my truck right now, so I got to wait for it to cool off a little bit before I turn that fan down. And I'm going to be driving to work while I chat with you. Hope you enjoy the show. Okay, what's happened in the last 20 years or so that that has proliferated people taking big game animals at long distances? That's the introduction of laser rangefinders and them being readily available and compact. My first laser rangefinder I bought used from a guy for $65 nearly 20 years ago, and it was the size of a big pair of binoculars. They weren't super practical. It worked. They weren't super practical. And, for bow hunting and stuff like that, they were great. But a deer at 300 yards, you may get a range, you may not, etc. I spent, I don't know, $125 or something on a rangefinder I've got now that'll fit in the breast pocket of a shirt. It's got 6 power magnification, which I wish it had 4. 6 is a little much for that small of a reticle, but whatever, not reticle. Anyway, for that small of a lens. But it will range a non-reflective target, such as a deer, out to 600 yards. Now you're talking. Now, hey, if I could tell how far away that thing is, when back in the day, we got pretty good judging distance out to, say, 300 yards, and we all liked flat shooting cartridges, and did our best to get it to where we just sighted in for 300 yards. Every now and then you'd hear about a guy taking a 400-yard shot, but he'd be on a power line cut or something like that, where he knew how far away it was, as a general rule. Not that many people can accurately range those distances. Now you could use mil dots and things like that, but it takes time. The laser rangefinder changed the game. And now you have rifle scopes with dial-up turrets that are readily available. You can get an inexpensive scope with a zero stop and a dial-up turret and all that. So now you hop down on your pack, you get your rifle settled, you take a range, you dial your adjustments, boom, and the animal dies, right? Well, here's the issue. Most people, and I'm going to step on a lot of toes, and I really don't care. Most people are not capable of taking a shot past 300 yards. And I dare say the majority aren't capable of consistently keeping a bullet in the vitals past 200 yards. People, all kind of people are there. Well, I've killed such and such at 557 yards, and that was before laser range. Fine. Yeah. Okay. How many did you miss? Gut shot, break legs. You don't hear about that. When I bring that up, I'm either lied to or I'm told, or it just goes silent. You read the works of guys like Jack O'Connor, Elmer Keith. They took some really long shots. Elmer Keith once put down a wounded deer at like 600 yards with a 44 Magnum handgun. Now, Wikipedia will say it was with a 6-inch barrel, but I'm pretty sure the article I read from him said it was a 4-inch barrel, but that doesn't really matter. That's a spectacular shot. He practiced a lot, and it was a wounded animal. There's a difference there. If the animal's already wounded, put another hole in it. Only once in my life have I lost an animal that I was able to put 2 bullets in. And the first one was just a graze. We found that out later, so really I only got 1. But if you can put 2 bullets in an animal, Craig Boddington will tell you that that he's never seen a buffalo lost, a Cape buffalo, that had 2 shots in it. If you made a bad shot or you don't know where you hit, you got another opportunity. Put another shot in. That was free. That's not part of this. But dealing with wounded animals is different. At this point, it's already a mess. Just put another hole in them. I was in the Army for 6 years. I've been around guns my entire life. Now, granted, all of my deer hunting has been in the Midwest and the Southeast. And shots are generally fairly close. So maybe I'm a little biased there. I'll take that. What I saw in the Army, though, and I'm not talking about qualification day when nobody's shot all year long and most of these people don't own a firearm and it's a clown show. I'm talking about weapons time. Weapons phase. When you spend weeks zeroing your rifle, familiarizing yourself with your rifle, dry fire practice, cleaning it, familiarizing yourself with it, practicing over and over and over and over and over and over. Weeks of training by some of the best marksmen in the world. "40 out of 40 in the Army is a Hawkeye. And I've yet to see a drill sergeant. That's a perfect score, they call it a Hawkeye. I've yet to see a drill sergeant in the Army that couldn't get at least 38 out of 40. And many of them will shoot 40 out of 40. Out to 300 meters, when I was in an M16A2 with iron sights on a human silhouette out to 300 meters. You've got some of the best shots there is. Training you. Full weapons immersion. Dry fire practice, live fire practice, etc., etc., etc. And at the end of it all, you qualify, and you still have very few people that can hit that 300-meter target. And this is just a human silhouette, folks. This isn't a deer's vital zone. This is to hit somewhere from the waist up on a human target. When I qualified before I went to Iraq, they issued us what they called a CCO. It was an aim point red dot sight. Those were great. We would sight in with our irons first. Then we would do what they called lollipopping, where you would get on a good rest. They'd move your red dot until you'd line up your irons, and they'd move your red dot until it was right on top of your iron sights, of your front post. And then you would go shoot and verify that. Folks, that made it easy. That optic was awesome. Just put the red dot on it and squeeze the trigger. That's all it takes. I consider myself a decent shot. Maybe just a hair above average, okay? And I never qualified expert. I qualified sharpshooter several times. I never qualified expert. I think I shot expert once for practice, but never for qualification. Even with an optic. Now those are practical situations. Shooting from a foxhole. Shooting from prone, supported and unsupported. Shooting kneeling, and now there's a lot of different things they do. That's practical. Well, when you're hunting, you don't have a bench and sandbags. Maybe if you're in an elevated blind or a ground blind, you've got all that kind of stuff. The average guy, especially the guy that's going out west to hunt antelope, elk, mule deer, things like that, he doesn't have all that. He's got a pack. Maybe he can put his binocular case under the buttstock for a rear bag. It's not bench shooting. But you've got these guys that go out, they buy a membership to a club that'll shoot out to 600 yards. They go out and they're clinging 8-inch plates at 600 yards every time with their 6.5 Creedmoor or their 6mm ARC or whatever it is. Hey, nothing wrong with any of those cartridges. Absolutely nothing. And then they think that they're going to be able to go out, take a rest over their backpack after they've hiked 3 miles with their heart rate jumping around 110, and put a bullet through the lungs of not only the biggest elk they've ever seen in their life, the only one they've ever shot at. Folks, we're setting ourselves up for failure. And it's getting proliferated. There's so many YouTube channels and things like that out there, and I'm not going to name them. You guys know who they are. That say, well, you have to be ready to make a 600 or 700 yard shot. I'm on a couple of elk hunting pages on Facebook, and guys will say, you know, well, how far of a shot should I be ready to take? And everybody, almost everybody, well, if you can't consistently make a 500 yard shot in field conditions, you shouldn't be elk hunting. I refuse to believe that's true, and here's why. You're talking elk, mule deer, pronghorn, stuff like that were almost hunted to extinction in the West by guys with Hawken rifles or similar. Black powder cartridge rifles like 45-70, 45-110 and 120, 50-110, 45-90. And lever action rifles chambered in 44-40, 38-40, 32-20. 3240, 3855 Ballard. Well, you know, they took 300-400 yard shots with them Sharps rifles. If you read their articles, they broke a lot of legs, they hit a lot of guts, stuff like that too. I know what I was going to say. I've read a lot of stuff from Elmer Keith and Jack O'Connor. Those guys were great shots. Those guys wounded their share of animals too. And you can read about it in the articles. Today they don't show that stuff. YouTube guys and whatnot, they don't show when they hit a deer in the ham trying to make a 500-yard shot. They just go and shoot another one and they put it on film. I got a buddy that lives in Wyoming that's run into a few of those guys, and he's heard them talk in the airport. Well, you know, we finally got such and such. You know, it's a shame that I got shot that big one. Yeah, you're right. It's a shame. Anyway, hey, I've crippled my share of animals at much closer range than that. I'm not being hypercritical. I'm trying to be realistic. If you can gut shoot a deer at 100 yards, how greater are your chances at 500 yards? Okay, folks. The big game animals out west were hunted to near extinction by lever action and single shot black powder cartridge rifles and muzzle loaders. By the time the cartridge rifles became really prevalent, a lot of the western game was already on a decline from the fur trappers and things. Those guys killed a lot of animals too to eat. And market hunters started to move out west to ship deer to New York City and stuff like that, because they'd already depleted their resource east of the Mississippi with muzzle loaders, by the way. So to say that you have to make a 500, 600, 700 yard shot, it's just not true. Now, I have a very small sample size. I've taken one elk in my life, and the shot was under 300 yards. One elk. I've taken dozens of whitetails in varied terrain, not just woods. And I'd say my average shots, my overall average is probably 100 yards. If you take out my longest shots, my average is probably 60. But I've taken deer from 6 steps to right around 300 yards. And I have used shotguns with slugs, muzzle loaders, archery equipment, crossbows, 30-06, 300 short mag, 30-30, 35 Remington. A little bit of a variation, if you will. And I personally believe that most people should keep your shots 300 yards and under. Work on your woodsmanship skills. How many people could get in and out of the woods, go a couple of miles, get in and out of the woods without their Onyx? Paper maps, I'm okay with. Compasses, I'm okay with. But I'm talking without your Onyx that tells you exactly where you're at. Hey, I rely on mine a lot too. I'm not being hypercritical. But I think, you know, the laser rangefinders, more accurate rifles, dial-up turrets on scopes, things like that, all this technology has replaced woodsmanship, bushcraft, if you will. I can remember in my early 20s, a buddy of mine putting a really big scope on a rifle and talking about wanting to be able to shoot out to 400 or 500 yards. And man, I don't know if I'd take a 300-yard shot. I had a 30-06, 150 grain bullets, and it was a tack drive. The first two shots had hit almost the same hole. The second shot would be just enough to be a white space with it. Every time at 100 yards. I mean, it was a tack drive. Now, don't get me wrong. My buddy didn't take those long shots because in reality he wasn't comfortable with them. But he talked about it. And I remember saying, I just don't know. I took a deer that year right around 300 yards. I had a rock solid rest. And it was a now or never thing, and I went ahead and took the shot. I didn't make the best shot in the world either. I had to finish it off when I walked up to it. Let's talk about practical field conditions, okay? Maybe you've got a pack you can rest over your pack. Maybe you've got a small rear bag that you can carry in your pack that you can use, or you've got a binocular case, fanny pack, something like that that you can use as a rear bag. You're plopped down in prone, the mule deer of your life. This thing's 185 inches, and it's standing on the next ridge over, and you've just lasered it at 465 yards. It's feeding in a little meadow. It's perfectly calm. No other animals are around. You've practiced out to 500 yards. Under field conditions, shooting prone, shooting over a pack, stuff like that. You dial up your turrets. You're just about to squeeze the trigger, and the wind shifts, and he goes on high alert. And his head's up, and his tail's twitching, and he's moving his legs. Are you going to take that shot? A lot of guys are just going to, send it. On that perfectly calm animal, you've practiced out to 500 yards. I think it's ethical. I think you should still try to get closer, but I think it's ethical. You can harvest that animal cleanly. When he starts twitching and moving around, though, everything changes. How about this? You're on an elk hunt of a lifetime. You've put in for 25 years, and you finally drew a trophy unit in Utah. You've been to this area before with spike tags, and you've been fortunate enough to harvest a couple of elk. You've watched a massive 6x6 for the last 3 years, and you finally got a tag for him in your pocket. You took some extra days off of work. You got in there 3 days before season started, and you located the monster. This dude will score 350 inches. And you're so excited because you've been within range of him already, and you know that you can kill this elk. The only thing left now is to squeeze the trigger and put your tag on the animal. You get up in the morning, 2 more hunters have camped nearby. You're down a little bit. You think, man, they might spook my elk. You go to where you've seen him feeding the last 3 days and he's not there. So you look around, you figure out that he's moved one ridge over because of the extra pressure that was added over the night. You've practiced out to 500 yards. You've got a 300 Winchester Magnum with a 180 grain tip bonded bullet. You know it like the back of your hand. You've put 500 rounds through it this summer practicing. You laser the elk 385 yards. Should be a chip shot. But here's the problem. He's standing in some brush. You can only see the top half of his body. And you have to stand to make the shot. And you've got a 2-inch sapling to lean against for a rest. Do you take the shot? I would say that the best shots in the world, the top 1%, shouldn't take that shot. And here's a reality. Those were scenarios. Here's a reality. Most big game hunters, regardless of what they hunt or where they hunt a handful of weekends a year, maybe take a week of vacation off, etc. They've got the same 30-06, 308, 7mm Magnum they've shot since they were 18. It's got an old Leupold Vari-X1 on it without dial-up turrets, or a Nikon Pro Staff, or something of the like. Nothing wrong with those, by the way. They shoot 3 or 4 shots at 100 yards the week before their hunt, and they call it good. They've got it sighted in 2.5 inches high at 100 yards. They know out to 300 yards they can hold on hair and make their shot. But they go out there thinking they can make a 500, 600, 700 yard shot when they've never shot past 100 yards in practice. I watched a guy where he did a challenge. And who thinks they can make a first shot under field conditions every time out to 600 yards? And one guy said, I can. I think he was shooting a 300 mag, something like that. Anyway, they flew him out there. They set him up. And I think he started missing at 250. He never came anywhere close at 600. Nowhere close. And at the end of it, after all of those misses, they asked him, so now how far are you confident in your shooting to take big game animals? And he still said, I think I'm pretty good out to 600 yards. when they had milk jugs full of water sitting out there, and he couldn't hit one at 300 yards, 400 yards, 500 yards. And he still thought he was confident out to 6. Here's the unfortunate reality. There's not a lot of long-range practice opportunity in the Midwest or on the East Coast. There's just not. Most ranges are going to be 100 yards. Now, I believe that most people, if they pay attention, have good rests, get rock solid, etc., 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 having practiced under field conditions out to 100 yards, should still be able to make a clean kill out to 300 yards with a rifle. But you hear so many times, you got to be ready to shoot out to 500 yards, 600 yards. I've talked to elk guides out west that say, if you can't make a 500-yard shot, don't worry about coming out here. I understand there's a lot of pressure. I get that. But what they're saying is, I can't get you closer than 500 yards, so deal with it. Now, the guide that guided me on my elk hunt last year, I asked him how far I should expect shooting. And he said 150 to 200 yards should be pretty easy. And then he asked me how far I was comfortable. And I said, all day long, 200, 250. If everything is right, I'll take a 300-yard shot. And he said, well, I'm not going to let you shoot past 300 yards. Now, that guy got my attention. And we were hunting some open territory, folks. When we first saw the elk herd, it was like 430 yards. And somebody with, dial-up turrets and lots of practice and whatnot could have taken one of them. I wasn't that guy. I don't have the opportunity to shoot that far very often. And even if I did, I don't know that I would. Field conditions are completely different. Let me tell you, an elk is a big animal. When it's standing out there at 300 or 400 yards, it looks pretty small. I think we need to get back to woodsmanship. I think we need to get back to learning how to read sign and get close to animals. Our forefathers took the same game we take with much less as far as technology and weapons. If great-great-great-grandpa could drop a mule deer at 120 steps with a Winchester 73 loaded in .44-40 and 210 grain bullets, and get that close every time, we can get within 300 yards of our game and make good, clean, ethical shots with a scoped 30-06. I watched a video. I went to talk about this and I lost my train of thought. I watched a video not that long ago where a guy was talking about antelope hunting and what he thought you should be able to do and how far you should be able to shoot, etc., etc., etc. Now, if you read articles about hunting pronghorns, most people will tell you The average shot's around 200 yards. So take a 243, a 30-06, something like that. Be good out to 300 yards and you'll be fine. This guy, after his one pronghorn hunt, now I'm not being overly critical because I've never been on a pronghorn hunt. He at least had one under his belt. Came to the conclusion that if you're not ready to take a 700-yard shot, you shouldn't hunt pronghorns. That just blew my mind. People kill them every year with bows and muzzle loaders. And he said you have to be able to take a shot to at least 700 yards. And I think he killed his at like 750. Something astronomical. With like a 16-inch barreled 6mm arc. I don't think that was a really good choice anyway, but not a whole lot of energy at that range with that cartridge. Especially from a short barrel. A 24-inch barrel, they get 2,800 feet per second. He was lucky if he was getting 24 at the muzzle. That's 30-30 velocities, folks. With 105 or 108 grain bullets. Now this guy is a very accomplished shot, and he can make the shot. There's another group of guys not that long ago put out a bunch of videos and some articles about taking moose at 300-400 yards with 6mm arcs and 22 arcs. And they talked about how effective it was and how great those Berger bullets are. And then how it took 5 shots to put them down. And still thought it was a great idea. Maybe I'm an old fud. But you know what? I'll wear that proudly. If you're going to do a lot of western hunting, practice out to 400 or 500 yards. Okay? I'm not saying not to. But folks, field conditions are different. You may not be able to get in the prone. You may have to take a kneeling shot. You may have to lean on a tree. You may have to have your buddy hold his ears while you rest over his shoulder. Just because you can ring steel at 1,000 yards with your 6.5 Creedmoor doesn't mean you can put a bullet through an elk's lungs at 400. And it certainly doesn't mean that you can kill him consistently at 800 or 1,000. It just doesn't. I have stuck to this for a long time, and I will continue to stick with it. The vast majority of people out there should not take a shot past 300 yards. And I would say less than 1% of the hunters in the woods every fall should take a shot past 4. I've met a lot of hunters over the years. I've seen a lot of shooters. I was in the military for 6 years. I'm not the most experienced shot in the world, and I'll be the first to tell you that. But I've seen too many things go wrong. I've seen guys take shots at deer 2, 3 200-300 yards with open-sighted rifles that the bead covered the vital zone at 100 yards. I've seen really good shots get flustered and gut shoot deer at less than 100 yards. And I've seen some mediocre or downright poor shots make some really good shots under field conditions. I've been hunting deer and other big game, mostly deer, for the last 30-some years. There's a lot of opportunity if you keep your shots to 300, 350, 400 yards. There's a lot of opportunities still. People kill elk with bows every year. People kill elk with muzzleloaders every year. Guys will say, well, I need to be ready for a 500-yard shot, so I guess that 30-06 just ain't going to do it. Well, a 30-06 will do it with the right bullets. But why do you need to be ready for a 500-yard shot? I understand you spend a lot of money on tags and travel, outfitters, etc. I get it. But I don't care if I've spent $15,000 on a tag and another $5,000 to get somewhere. That animal's life is important, and I don't want him to suffer. And 500 yards is a long shot. Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of rambling. But don't let the long-range bug bite you. Shoot what you're comfortable at the distance you're comfortable. Don't overestimate your confidence. We'll see you later.